Hey everyone, it's Warriors NRL Fanatics. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. And I've got a very special guest joining me from the This Warriors Life podcast. It's Will Evans. You guys will know This Warriors Life podcast is a very well-known podcast section, and they do some great work with the stuff they do with the Warriors content that they produce each week on their podcasting platform. So, yeah, it's actually the first time I've had Will on this channel. I know we haven't been able to do any collabs just yet, but this is the first time we've actually done this sort of stuff together. So yeah, well, welcome to the channel. It's good to have you on, and yeah, hope you're doing well.
Oh, it's great to be here, Christian. Well overdue, mate. Yeah, we've had a few false starts, and obviously Brad and I at This Warriors Life finally grew up here and started doing some video content. So yeah, happy to be here on Warriors NRL Fanatics Live finally with the busiest Warriors content creator out there. We love the work you do, mate. So it's much appreciated by us, and you're a credit to the Warriors community in general. So yeah, great to jump on here with you and have a chat.
No worries. I appreciate these kind words. And look, you and Brad obviously been doing a podcast. It's called This Warriors Life Podcast. So just before we get you to give your just a bit of knowledge around your background in rugby league, maybe how you become a fan and how you started your podcast. Just want to let everyone know that what we're going to be doing today is chatting all things pre-season. So we'll have a little recap, look back at the trials, that trial against the Sharks last week. We'll also have a chat about this coming trial against the Storm this week as well. Sort of the other topics around the Warriors world at the moment, especially with the captaincy, and that's also been announced just not long until we went live, actually. So it was great timing there. But to everyone in the chat, we'll say hello to Jacko in the chat there. Hello to Jacko in the chat. Kia ora, Jacko. Hope you're doing well. And I'm sure we'll get a few viewers popping into the chat during the show. So make sure you do like the live stream as well. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, and also go and follow Will and Brad's This Warriors Life podcast. I put all the links to their platforms in the live chat there. So go and check out This Warriors Life podcast. So, Will, just a bit of maybe a little bit of a background in regards to how you started your podcast and where you're from. And yeah, well, what do what do you do regards to your podcast? So yeah, just a little bit of a background on how you all started it out.
Yeah, so the podcast has been going since 2019. It was Brad's idea. So yeah, it's sort of an extension of the website. I started doing more just website content starting in 2018 with This Warriors Life. And yeah, Brad's idea was to attach a podcast to it. It was pretty sloppy from the start. If it hasn't got much better, to be honest, in that regard. But yeah, yeah, we've been trucking along for, I think, going into our 7th season now, and yeah, just Brad and I have known each other for 20 plus years, and loved having a yarn about the Warriors. He'd call me a few times a week, and thought this was when there wasn't a hell of a lot of Warriors podcasts out there. Now there's a few of us going, but yeah, so we sort of jumped into that space. I think View from the East Stand was the only one going at the time.
Yeah.
And then yeah, quite a few others jumped on board, which has been great. We're yeah, it's a great little community, but very proud to be part of it, and grateful for the people that support us and listen to our ramblings. But yeah, I guess going back a little further, and how I started out as a league fan, pretty similar story to a lot of New Zealanders my age. The Winfield Cup, early 90s, that explosion, Graham Lowe at Manly, Matthew Ridge, and all the Kiwis there. And just fell in love with the competition and the game back then. My dad was a big league fan. So I'd been watching it for 5 seasons before the Warriors came in, and never really it's had a grip on me ever since. Been lucky enough to sort of work within the game as a freelance writer over the last 10 years full time. Another five or so years before that, as a sort of part time side gig when I was living in Brisbane. Written a few books, written for a few magazines, and currently in my 10th or 11th season with Canterbury Rugby League back here, and I live not far from Christchurch. New Zealand Rugby League's historian, so I'm very lucky to have had a fair bit to do with NZRL here. The Warriors life keeps me reasonably busy as well, and do a bit of sports betting work, mostly around league. So that's how I earn a crust, and it's great to be able to sort of incorporate what Brad and I do, and Fonzie obviously with the podcast into my working week.
Yeah, so in regards to rugby league, you say you grew up around it. So what made you become like a league fan in like terms of what you made you support growing up watching rugby league? Because obviously there's so many Kiwis obviously born up in a rugby union. They sort of watch rugby union. You don't often hear a lot of Kiwis born up in watching rugby league. So what is your sort of like background around rugby league in general as a whole, and the Warriors? How did you become like a fan of the Warriors?
Yeah, I guess it does go back to Dad. Like he lived in Australia. I was actually born in Australia. My parents are Kiwis, but I was born on the Gold Coast, and so he got
Oh
quite
yeah.
into the game then. This around about the time Origin was starting out, and yeah, he was always pretty into it. We lived in Northland when I was growing up, a very a full-on sort of rugby union culture, I guess. I'd go along to watch North Auckland play at Okara Park and had some great times there. And I loved Union back then too. Just I think it was this like it is now, and like you see a lot of people switching to the NRL and sort of turning off Super Rugby, sort of especially younger people.
Yeah.
It's the strength of the competition and the quality of it. Just that those Winfield Cup glory days of the early 90s. I mean, it just didn't get any better, and obviously getting a New Zealand team in the competition is huge. I've actually told the story a couple of times, fairly sheepishly on the podcast, but I was a Broncos fan leading up to the Warriors introduction, and
Yeah.
I actually kept supporting the Broncos for another 15 or so years, with the Warriors as a very passionate second club. But it wasn't until 2011 where I finally made the switch. The heart wants what it wants, and I obviously love the club. Have done since day one, but
Yeah.
they've been my one and only since then.
Yeah, actually got a question here from Jacko to you here saying, well, will please tell me your jump ship when Canterbury get an NRL team? Would you, like, if there was an NRL team in Christchurch, would you move to supporting the Christchurch side, or would you stay loyal to the Warriors? Because there's a
Oh,
thing about
geez,
second New Zealand teams. Yeah.
Jacko's coming in hot with the curly questions straight off the bat. Yeah,
Yeah.
it will be an interesting one actually. Obviously, again, it'll probably just be sort of how I feel. It'll probably be more of a I'll support both and just let the heart decide once they face off for the first time. If we indeed get a team here, there's a lot of big pluses about getting a team here. Certainly a strong contender, new stadium, a really grassroots community here. Obviously, I'm fairly involved with Canterbury Rugby League, so I know the game very well locally. So from that respect, it would be hard to not jump on board with them. But we'll just have to see what happens if that day comes.
Yeah, and also I just don't want to ask in regards to the Warriors. Obviously we as fans know we've been through, some up and downs as a roller coaster ride as a Warriors fan. I've myself been a fan since I was a kid. Obviously born in Auckland, New Zealand, but been living here on the Gold Coast in Australia for 10 years now. I moved here it was around about 2010. Yeah, 2010 I moved to the Gold Coast, but born obviously with the rugby league, there's always a journey. Is there any particular journey, a story that made you like become a Warriors fan?
I think it was, if you were asking him when I sort of made that switch permanently from
Yeah.
supporting the Broncos instead of both, and just the Warriors instead of both clubs, it was sort of that
Mm,
coincidence of 2011. We obviously the Warriors had
yep.
a great season then. Sean Johnson emerging, that run to the grand final was just incredible, and Darren Lockyer was my favourite player of all time at the time, retired during that same final series. So yeah, that's probably the big moment was when they played in a semi-final. It was actually the week one qualifying final. It wasn't sudden death, and the
Mm,
Broncos gave the Warriors an absolute hiding.
yeah.
And I just didn't feel anything. Normally, I'd be ecstatic. Broncos would, thrash someone in a finals game that used to be my bread and butter, and I felt nothing. I almost felt disappointed. I thought, hang on, what's happening here? Am I becoming more of a Warriors fan than a Broncos fan? Obviously, Warriors got a bit of a reprieve with the McIntyre system, got a second life, and went all the way to the grand final. And yeah, it's all over for the Broncos as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, you said you were an actual Broncos fan before that. So like how long did you support the Broncos before coming a Warriors fan? Because yeah,
It's good. 22 seasons. I started watching in
right.
1990. Being Queensland born, I sort of, they were the
Mm,
team that I jumped on board with.
yep,
The first team that I saw in a game. Still remember the game, and it was a classic against Canberra. They had Alfie, they had the Walters boys. Wally was still there at the time. They're an exciting team to watch. And yeah, a couple of years later, they won a couple of premierships in a row. So I was pretty hooked on them for a long time. It's look back with a little bit of shame now that I didn't just switch. And particularly looking at that first ever Warriors game against the Broncos, and I was, sitting there
yes,
cheering for the Broncos. And what a classic game it was. But yeah, just the Warriors have always been still I've supported them passionately. Watched hundreds of games with my old man, who was a massive Warriors
yep,
fan from day one. And yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to write the Warriors 25-year history in 2019. So I've sort of got to relive everything that they went through from day one in the process of writing that as well. And yeah, it's just an amazing history. Still waiting for that first premiership. A few near misses, some incredible lows, but
mm,
yeah, I will say that nothing, the highs, even though they haven't been quite as high as winning premierships like the Broncos did, the highs have been far more emotional, and the lows have been far more shattering as a Warriors fan than
yeah.
they were supporting any other team or any other
Oh,
team in any other sport.
yeah, definitely. Like obviously with the with the fan base, we're quite a passionate fan base. When things don't go right, we're quick to be a bit more, reactive. And then if we're doing well, we overreact sometimes. We get excited, but that's the thing as fans. We always enjoy that. But just a comment here. Tay's just saying here, a lot of quality players through the years at the Broncos. Yeah, they definitely had some great players over the years, some legend players as well. So yeah, is there like just particular like a favorite memory as a Warriors game you ever attended live or watched on TV? What would you say is one of them? Like it could be one or two, it could be a couple, but what did you say your favorite Warriors memory? I think a lot of people say obviously a couple of years ago where we made the finals, and we beat the Storm. That was one of my favorites, being the Storm in 2008, and in the 2011 game against the Storm. So what is yours like in terms of a favorite sort of memory, in terms of a Warriors game you've watched or attended live, or what would you say?
Yeah, I think from a live point of view, I've got a shocking record win-loss wise of attending Warriors games. So I'd have to say going to the semi-final win over Newcastle a couple of years ago was just amazing. Just the noise. I've been to Mount Smart plenty of times, but never heard it like that. And it was just such a special game. It just worked out so well for the Warriors, and just those little moments. Sean Johnson getting an early mark and doing half a lap around the field, and just the crowd. The game was already won. Just a magical night. That's probably from a live point of view. I've had some crushing losses as a fan live. Those are probably the other ones that stick out. As a viewer, as obviously 2008. I mean, again, I was still supporting the Broncos then, but geez, I love that 2008 elimination win over the Storm, and creating history as the first 8th place team to beat the minor premiers. 2011 even more special. That's probably my favourite game, but go back and watch that one a lot. The preliminary final in Melbourne, just incredible. The Tigers game a week before that. I go on. I think it's the regular season ones that do stick out as well. That run during 2013, even though that season didn't amount to anything. There's just some magical memories from there. 2015, Sean Johnson at Shark Park on the bell. Sean Johnson again in his last game last year. It was just an incredible way to finish his career, and what had been a pretty disappointing season. This is what I love about the Warriors, is that even in the bad seasons, there'll always be a game or two or a couple of moments that you remember forever. Last year I thought was particularly disappointing, but to get wins like the Magic Round against Penrith, a week later against the Dolphins, was not far behind that, and then SJ's exit. They they just find a way to create memories even in those sort of lower seasons.
Yeah, just actually going through the comments to say hello to some of the new viewers that just joined. Got CJ joining, so hello to CJ and hello to Greg as well. Hello to our mod there and Jose. Hope you're doing well, Jose, in the chat. Actually, CJ just asked a question, and I will go back on it. Actually, no, this is a comment just made regards to Sam Healey. Hey, fellas, as a South fan, like the looks of Sam Healey last week, I think he could get into your 1 to 17. And then he also asked here, what made you go from Brisbane to Warriors, if I ask. So I think we already covered on that, but well, if you want to, allow what you just said long ago.
Yeah, again, I think it was a decision made with the heart, but I was actually living in Brisbane at the time. Maybe it was being in Brisbane and around all those Broncos supporters, it kind of put me off, and just wanted to get back to my heritage, being a Kiwi, and I guess all those elements that we talked about before.
Yeah, so who's your like currently, if you've got a player right now that your favorite current player, and also maybe a favorite past Warriors player that you probably liked watching, who would you say, like right now and like in the past, like in terms of a former player or a current player?
Yeah, it's interesting because Sean Johnson's my favourite player of all time. Obviously, I found it very hard when he left the club and was away for a few years. I sort of, and we still had Roger. He was probably my favourite while SJ was away. Now that SJ's gone again, I don't quite have a favourite player on the current roster. Sort of, I'm up for grabs. I'm waiting for someone to jump out this season and capture my heart. There's some young guys in the team. Ali Leotara, I'm a big fan of. If Tane Tuapiki could force his way into the team, I'm a big fan of him. But yeah, there's no one sort of obvious jumping out, which is an unusual position for me to be in as a fan of, just having, Lockyer for 15 years and then straight into Sean Johnson fandom. So yeah, we'll see what happens. As far as past Warriors players go, I love what Kevin Campion brought to the team in 2001, even though he was only there for a couple of years. Brent Webb was wonderful to watch, in the years after that. Clinton Torpy, what a player he was. I mean, I think we've all been just waiting for another centre to come along like him. And I have to say, as far as enjoyment of watching them, even though it could be incredibly frustrating, when Conrad Harrell was on, I just think he was, he's almost Meninga-like when he was at his best. Obviously, he couldn't string that together that for long enough, and was a pretty frustrating kind of player for the fans and the coaches. But geez, when he was in full flight, he was amazing to watch as well.
Yeah, it's great to hear, your sort of background of rugby league, and just a bit of getting to know you a bit more there. But just want to actually now touch on it. Now we talk about the pre-season, the off season that's been going on at the moment. Obviously, lot of happenings. Obviously, we had our trial last week. Just what were your takes out of that trial against the Sharks last Friday night? What were your overall thoughts on that particular game? Because obviously, with it being a trial, it's, you get a few mistakes there and again, it's scrappy. But there's some good standout performances from a few players. So, what did you make out of that trial game?
Yeah, it was pretty clunky, wasn't it? And they're always excited to get footy back, and particularly
Mm,
excited to see the Warriors play again. And you forget how poor the quality can be of the football sometimes in trial matches, and it probably lacks that intensity.
mm,
There is errors. The Warriors in particular had a lot of combinations to work out. We probably named the strongest team of the four that played last weekend as far as what our
yeah.
round one team might look like. So from that perspective, maybe a little disappointing only to end up with a draw, although we did sort of rest a lot of guys for that last 20 and gave up that lead.
Mm,
Would have preferred a few more points, I think. But like any trial, I think it's more about the individual performances and how some of those combinations worked. I think Luke Metcalf, for someone that hasn't played a lot of senior footy in the number 7, and if he is the one we're grooming as our halfback, then I thought there was some pretty good signs there. A 40-20, he was busy and looked confident in attack. Bit to work on with his kicking game, but it was
mm,
I thought it was reasonable and probably got a bit better as the game wore on. Aaron Clark looked really good to me in his return to the Warriors. Mitch Barnett had a big game despite having to leave with that blood bin early on, and I thought Chance Nickel-Klokstad was really good. Involved in both tries, or scored one and set up the other. So and just looked to be trying to add a couple more strings to his bow in attack,
mm.
and as well as being an absolute powerhouse with the run meters and safe as at the back. So I thought he was a standout. But all in all, not too disappointed. Nothing to get overly excited about. But good to have it out of the way.
Yeah, Jose is just saying here, yeah, it was a clunky start, but there was some good signs, and I think there were
Yeah,
definitely some,
absolutely.
but definitely some good signs. I think going into this game was a bit of a spotlight in our halves. Obviously this year, with the loss of SJ retiring, the biggest talking point is Tamari Martin and Luke Metcalf and how they're going to form as a partnership. Now, what do you make out of those two going into the season? Do you think that is our starting halves going forward into the season? Because I looked at Luke Metcalf. I thought Luke Metcalf was strong in the game, but particularly Tamari Martin. I think he was good defensively, but there's some other plays. He wasn't quite. I think he didn't quite have a big game. But he's been named. I see he's been named this week. They've both been named again for this week's clash against the Storm down there in Hamilton. So, yeah, what do you make out of the halves and the spine? Because it's a sort of a big talking point for the Warriors going into this year. Because our four pack, I think our four pack's fine. We've got a very good four pack there. Plenty of depth as well as some of the young ones like Laban, Haliasima. So obviously we just lost Zion Mo to the Dogs. So what are your thoughts on the spine there in particular?
In terms of the halves, that's obviously going to be the make or break factor of our season. I think we are pretty well serviced in the forwards for depth and quality. Decent back five contingent with a couple of sort of upper echelon players and a fair bit of depth there again. Although we've already picked up a few injuries, unfortunately. But yeah, we've got a top tier hooker, some good options at fullback. But the halves is very much a question mark, and you got four sort of, I would say, mid-range guys. It's for me, it's you're sort of you're more thinking about what they can't do than what they can. If that makes sense, when you're trying to pick the best two, you sort of keep coming back to some of their shortcomings. Tanner Boyd's got the best kicking game, is the best goal kicker. He's actually started the most games at halfback of any of the four contenders, but then he's maybe not quite creative enough. Luke Metcalf is the quickest, probably got the most attacking upside, but then he's played 9 New South Wales Cup games at halfback and just hasn't played senior footy at halfback hardly at all. Tamate, had some good games. The Magic Round, he was sensational, but then he had some shockers as well, and it looks like he's been bumped back into that 5'8" sort of role. And I thought he was pretty ordinary, to be honest, in the trial. Didn't really, sort of stuck in that little channel, didn't look to get involved, and didn't really have too many standout touches. So, and then you got Chanel, who's a bit more versatile than the rest of them. And can fill other gaps in the squad. For me, he'd be the 5'8" I'd like to see, and I was probably surprised to see him not named in the number 6 for this week. They've given Tamate another shot at it. We'll see how many minutes each of them get against the Storm. But for me, I think if it is Luke Metcalf going into round 1 as halfback, I think Chanel is the best foil for him. He seems to find a way to involve himself. He doesn't sort of go into his shell as much as Tamate might. I think Chanel's got a fairly strong kicking game. I think his kicking game's quite underrated. And he's, he was a halfback growing up as well. So he sort of does have that, organising nous about him as well. That's where I'd like to see them go. It would be getting pretty frustrating to see Tamate sort of not feature that heavily in sort of guiding the team around or creating when you've got a bit of an NRL novice in number 7. I would say Tanner Boyd is out injured again, so didn't have a chance to press his claims. And then you got a couple of young guys like Luke Hanson and Jett Cleary, both in last week's trial squad and this week again, who, there's a chance that they could feature in first grade at some time this year. But it's a tough position to be in, not knowing exactly who your best halves are, and you want to give a combination a chance to settle and build. But then how long do you wait if it's not working? Because you do have other options there. So that's a balance Andrew Webster's going to have to find.
Yeah, I agree. And regards to, of course, because importance is obviously as a spine, so important. If you want to do well in the NRL, you've got to have a consistent 1, 6, 7, and 9. Obviously, we know our niners. There's Egan, of course. We know who our fullback is a bit of a big one. It's a bit of a talking point as well, because I know CNEC's been done a great job for us for a number of years there at that position. But last year, Chance, wasn't at his best. Right, it was probably one of his not his best years in terms of performances, and obviously he had an injury as well. But I think he was particularly strong in that Sharks game, in that trial game against the Sharks. There's a lot of talks around Tane to a pig. There's a lot of fans that want to see Tane, get a start in the fullback spot. We saw him come on in that game in the second half and play on the wing. Obviously, there's a bit of doubt around Dallin and Dallin's fitness going to round 1. So, what do you make out of that, Tane? Because I really am a big Tane to a picky fan. I absolutely love him. He's a really talented player. I do believe he's a bit way too good to be sitting in reserve grade in the New South Wales Cup. So it's hard to even put him into the 1 to 17 because you've got a chance. Then you've also got our other centres of Leo Tower and that. So, where do you put him? And when a fully fit side, how's he going to get in there? When everyone's fully fit. So, what do you do? You think Tane should be starting fullback, or Cenac? Do we stay loyal to Cenac for the season? So, what are your thoughts around that?
Personally, I would have liked to see them go with Tane, and he'll get the start this week with Chance in the Māori All Stars team. So it's a big opportunity for him to press those claims again. I just think he adds, when our halves are sort of a bit inexperienced together, that having a ball player at fullback, would be quite a bonus. Chan's kind of showed a few signs the other night that he's trying to up that part of his game, and he's played a bit of 5'8", although not particularly well for the Kiwis late last year, but he has had some success there. He played in the number 6 for the All Stars this week, and again, actually. I just like the balance of, having I think Chance is an excellent centre. He's played a fair bit of test footy there. And I think, we're maybe a little bit light on centres. I mean, Pompey's pretty hot and cold. Rocco Berry's still out, injured indefinitely. And Ali Lautau, I think, has got one of those spots locked up. But I would, like to see Chance get a run in the centres with Tane at fullback. I just think it's the best sort of collective group that we could have. Showed it in that Sharks game in the last round last year. Chance was superb at centre. Tane was brilliant at fullback. When he's got the opportunity, I don't think Tane's let anyone down. He was brilliant in that Magic Round win. I think, but probably the most interesting clue to what may or may not happen is that, Rogers, he pulled out last week, but he was named on the wing. Then again, and there's no chance there that it's Tane and not Roger, that Roger is on the wing. So that would suggest that is his position for 2025, and that it does come down to Tane and Chance.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about this one. Wingers. Do you feel like we've got enough depth in that area? Because we saw Ed Cossey play last week, and he came in for Roger, and look, it wasn't his greatest game, to be quite honest. No, and he has been named again this week. Yeah, he's been given a lot of opportunities in first grade over the years, Ed Cossey, and he's not been able to find that consistency. So, what are your thoughts around that? Because there's been some rumours around Warriors maybe trying to, go after another player or something like that, or do you just stick within the club, or I don't know, like what are you? Obviously we know Roger's going to be starting when he's fully fit. So do you like the backup options we have at the moment in terms of our wingers, or?
Yeah, I'm a little bit. It's a little bit of a gulf there, I think, and now we see Dallin has gone down with that wrist injury. He's going to require surgery. Could be out for round one and beyond. And all of a sudden, we look very thin. We've got Roger. He's a premiership winning winger and a test winger, but hasn't played a lot there. So it's a bit. It's probably a bit ambitious to expect him to be, a world beater on the wing straight off the bat. And what we've seen Dallin do the last couple of seasons, it's such a huge loss. I just don't think, and again, he has been picked to start this week, gets another opportunity, but just Ed is lovely kid, but let himself down too many times, and to spill a very regulation long kick in the first couple of minutes of the first trial, it just was a jarring reminder of what can happen when you pick Ed in the team. It's as simple as that. He's had some absolute howlers, and his ceiling is just not high enough to carry someone that can have a shocker like that so often. For me, Ed is a pure depth player, and it's a little bit scary, to be honest, that he's so close to the top of that depth chart on the wing. I mean, Myla Graham Talfa is still at the club. He's played plenty on the wing. I know he had a couple of runs at centre in first grade, and that's sort of where he's mostly played New South Wales Cup recently, but he's got a fair bit of experience at that level on the wing, and I just think he's so much of a safer option with probably more upside, to be honest. And I really don't see how he keeps getting a run. just seeing in the comments there, we should be trying hard to get Jesse Arthurs back. I mean, you'd take him in a heartbeat. There's plenty of other wingers around the NRL. I think Anton on your show talked about Sam Stone Street from the Sharks. He won't be able to get in ahead of Mulatalo and Katoa anytime soon. Maybe have a little bit of a sniff around him. But with some of the young guys, Pasakala got a bit of a run late in that trial on Friday, made a few mistakes. Seo Kali is probably more of a centre anyway, but he's pretty green too. We just do look a bit thin in that area with Montoya, leaving the club, and it was an area where we probably needed a bit more class anyway. Roger fills that gap to a certain extent, but then you get an injury to your premier winger, and all of a sudden you're in the shit again. So we'll see. We'll see who gets the start in round one. I thought Ed looked a little bit chunky, to be honest. After a big preseason, he just looked a little bit cumbersome, and I just think he's going to get exposed again and again. I know it's tough, but we're in the business of winning football games, and he's lost us a couple off his own bat. Don't see him winning us too many on his own.
Yeah, Jacko's just saying here with Rocco out long term, I think we should be trying to get Jesse Arthurs back. So yeah, he's just like you covered up on there into the chat around Jesse Arthurs. And yeah, look, I've saw some Ronaldo Mulatalo's just re-signed the Sharks, so that's not going to happen. I know there's some Warriors fans shouting out for him to sign with us, but that's definitely not going to happen now. So Kosi, probably really don't say too much more about Ed there, but look, another play I thought was a particular standouts. I thought in that trial game was Dimitri Valmuanga. What's your overall thoughts on young Dimitri Valmuanga, and also Jacob Laban as well, who I thought particularly it was a strong showing from Jacob and Dimitri Valmuanga. So yeah, what were your thoughts on those two? Do you think they're going to get into the 17 for round one against the Raiders?
I think Dimitrik has to be there. He was just so good
definitely.
when he came back. He obviously got a few games in 2023 and then the ACL. I thought he was superb coming back from that, and a couple of huge games. That game against the Dolphins that went to Golden Point late last year. I think he sort of stamped himself as a pretty rare talent. And for me, he's got to be in the 17. I think maybe Laban. We've got Nukore, Capewell, Halasima as a pretty strong edge contingent, and you've got other guys in your first choice 17 like Mitch Barnett that can play on an edge. I just don't think there's any room for another edge forward, and I'm not sure about Laban's ability to play in the middle. But yeah, for me, he's just not quite there yet. Great to have him in the squad, big talent. But for me, he's not quite in the 17 just yet. Interesting to see Vaimanga named in the second row this week. So yeah, a bit of an indication of where Andrew Webster potentially sees him being used a bit this year. And we'll see how many minutes he gets there. Nukore on the bench again. So a few interesting calls ahead of the Storm game.
Yeah, there is. There definitely is. I'm just seeing what the team list was, and obviously you've got Haliasima as well. What are your thoughts on Haliasima there?
Yeah, I mean, his introduction to the NRL was one of the highlights of last year. I mean, got sort of chucked out at centre fairly early on in his debut, had a blinder, almost scored one of the great tries. And yeah, just sort of which tends to happen, had a couple of good games and then a couple of, not so flash games, and finished the year out of first grade, but incredible talent. Just such an athlete, and I think I'd love to see him squeezed in somehow. Maybe it's a bit much to have two sort of fairly green forwards on the bench if it was if it was Vaimaunga and Halasima, but yeah, they're both long-term players for the club, and I don't think you can keep them out of the team for too long.
Yeah, I mean, I at the moment would have them in my 1 to 17 side for the Raiders clash, and I know we've got some very good young upcoming forwards. So our fullbacks, in terms of depth, is not really lacking in that department. I know we've lost Tohu Harris due to retirement. We lost Fanua Blake as the biggest one of all goes to the Sharks here. So I know people will say we've lost a lot of experience, which is understandable. It is quite a chunk of experience out of the side, but we've got plenty. I don't think we got plenty of leaders that we shouldn't worry too much about leadership. And speaking of leadership, we've just come into the captaincy chat, which I took to Anton last week. Now it's been officially announced that we've co-captains. We've got co-captains. So for James Fisher Harris and Mitchell Barnett. So what are your thoughts on that? Mitchell Barnett and James Fisher Harris as co-captains. They've gone with the two captains. I personally like it. I think it's a good call by the club. And I think both players will do that role very well. Actually, in terms of Barnett, obviously he's been captain before, and Fisher Harris has been captain when he was for the Kiwis. So what are your thoughts on the two captains that's been announced?
Yeah, I like it. When Fonzie and I and Brad talked about it earlier this year, I sort of spruiked that idea, and then I sort of started moving towards more favouring Mitch Barnett if it was going to be one of them. I was probably more inclined to pick Mitch, just the media duties and sitting in the press conferences. It just seems like James Fisher Harris might, tire of that and not particularly well suited to it. It just wouldn't benefit him that much. It doesn't seem like it was either going to be one of those two, I think. I know people have talked about Roger, but you're not going to have your captain on the wing, and there's probably just a bit of doubt about around how much footy he'll play this year. So I think it was always going to be Barnett or Fisher Harris, and you couldn't really go wrong with either, which might be why they went with co-captains. Sharing that role, they're probably going to be sort of on the field and off the field a lot at the same times, which sort of is potentially a bit problematic. They'll have to come up with someone who will be the on-field captain when they're both on the bench. Probably someone like Wade Egan makes sense, although if he's spelled, might be sort of a chance, or maybe even Roger.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good call. It reminds me a fair bit of 2001. Stacey Jones and Kevin Campion, co-captains. You had the sort of proven guy that was already at the club in Jones, and then the and the hardened recruit in Campion, and that's kind of what they've gone for here. Although obviously very different players, and that worked out pretty well. First final series in the club's history. So I think sharing the load in all those facets, they're both great leaders. Barnett showed it last year. Going on to win an Australian jumper on the strength of his form. James Fisher Harris has already done the job for New Zealand, and just commands that respect. And he was going to be a leader, a de facto leader anyway, whether he had the C next to his name or not. But I think having both of them, you can't really go wrong.
Yeah, and I said it with Anton. Look, regardless of who they pick, I'd be pretty happy. And it's both of them, so even more happier because it's a good choice. It didn't have to be one or the other. And both of them got the captaincy, so I think it's a good call by the club. And obviously with Fisher Harris, we know what his leadership he brings. We know with Barnett as well. He leads by actions more than words. With Barnett, so you got two contrasting different players in terms of what they can bring in terms of captaincy as well. So yeah, I like the call. I like the call by the club there in terms of appointing them as a captain, two captains, co-captains moving forward. So yeah, it's great stuff there by the club. Well, another thing I want to touch up on is young Sam Healy. I don't know if you have seen much of Sam Healy. A lot of people he would have been an unknown for a lot of people going into this season. Now, I watched a bit of Sam Healy in the New South Wales Cup last year, and he did a great job there. Now, the trial against the Sharks on the weekend, he when he came on, I thought he was very strong. He had a very good performance. So I see he's not he's in the reserves this week. So what are your thoughts on Sam Healy? Because obviously Lussig's been our second option in terms of backup hooker for a couple of seasons now. And we know with Wade, unfortunately I hate have to say this, but he has had a few knocks and injuries. He's not going to play a full 80 this year, not in every game. So we need a backup hooker option on the bench. Lustig's a good defensive player, but we need someone a bit more in terms of attacking spark, and I think that's what Sam Healy brings. Albeit it's only one game, we've seen him in action. But what do you make out of what are your thoughts on young Sam Healy?
Yeah, I'd like to see him in the 17. As you say, I think we
Yeah,
definitely need another dummy half option in the squad. I know people have talked about Aaron Clark, who's played a lot of footy at hooker. For me, it's a little bit in the sort of Jazz Tavanga boat. Those dummy half days for Aaron are over. I think he's pretty big and chunky. 98 kilos. I mean, if you were planning to play Wade the 80 and you only need to sort of replace him in the case of injury, maybe you could sort of have that contingency with an Aaron Clark.
mm,
But if you're planning to only play him Wade Egan 60, if the game plan is to generally give him a spell, then I think you need to carry more of a specialist. And Sam Healy, like it when you bring a hooker off the bench that adds something a bit different. Freddie Lussick, as you said, very solid player, good defender, lion-hearted kind of performer, but a bit limited, particularly in attack, and that service is a little bit slow. Healy, he's got a bit of work to do as well. Needs to
yeah,
sort of sharpen up that delivery from dummy half, but he's an X factor as well. As you spoke about for the Sharks and New South Wales Cup. Some of those highlights are pretty mouth-watering. The skills of a 5'8", good vision, just a real natural, and just quite a unique looking player. I think you would get a bit of a boost with him being injected into the game, whereas you sort of feel like things sort of slow down a bit if Lussick comes on for Egan, or if they have to, replace Wade for any other reason. We'll also say that Wade looked really good in
yep.
the first half of that trial. It was really, really encouraging to see. Obviously, last year he was carrying injuries and he sort of went down with concussion a lot, missed games. But I thought it was a really smooth start to the year for him, and good to see him without so much strapping on that elbow.
Yeah, definitely was actually a game without strapping, which was unusual for Egan to be doing. But just a comment here, just pop into this chat to Steve actually. Hello to Steve in the chat saying here, it's a lottery at the moment. I like Murata at centre. He so on a couple of balls throughout the size, hand in the middle. What are your thoughts on Murata going into this year? Is he you know obviously last year was a bit of a tough year for him. What are your thoughts here on Murata and also Ford, Jackson Ford? I think two players maybe under a little bit of do I just say a bit of pressure to the
Yeah, absolutely.
Ford stepping up
I
and
think.
playing. Mm, yep.
Yeah, sorry, I just lost your
Yep.
stream there for a second, mate. Sorry to interrupt, but I think both
Oh,
of those guys, you hit the nail on the head. You want a lot
yeah.
more out of them. Jackson Ford
Mm,
struggled at times and lost his place in the team. New Corday, I thought, was probably one of the more disappointing players. Just didn't have the usual impact. I mean, this is a guy that was a key part of a Parramatta team that made a grand final a couple of years ago. First season with the Warriors was pretty good when he was on the park. A few suspensions and injuries. Obviously, off to a tough start with injuries last year, and he had that sort of move to the middle, which was abandoned. And then I thought that he didn't really have that same intimidation factor and impact in the second row on the edge when he did come back. I just, it's almost it was almost sticking with him because of his reputation and the way that he can play, not the way that he was playing. I didn't think he, wasn't still there on merit anymore with some of the options we did have. So yeah, he's going to need to lift. I think his days as a centre may be over. He did play a bit there for Parramatta, but maybe not quite as agile and mobile as he might have been when he was playing a bit of centre. Jackson Ford, yeah, I can't put him in my 17 at the moment. I'm, again, a good depth player. After the 2023 he had, that's a hard pill for him to swallow because he would see himself as a genuine NRL player now. But, a few error-prone games, and we're interesting to see him picked as a starting prop this weekend for the trial, and an opportunity to press his claims. I guess he's versatile, plays on an edge or in the middle, which helps his claims. But yeah, for me, he's sort of in around that. I think we're going to see him named in the 18 to 23 jerseys more often than we see him named in the sort of 8 to 17.
Yeah, Jacko's just saying here, Nia Corey's on big money along with Capewell and RTS. Good season proved their worth their contracts. Yeah, what about Capewell as well, who just arrived at the club last season? Obviously, look, I know there's a bit of personally from my point of view, I probably wasn't a big fan of the signing at the start of last year. I'm still sort of in the air, yeah, mixed feelings right about him. But what are your thoughts here with the comment that Jacko made regards to Capewell? He's on, I think Nia Corey's on a bit of money there, and Capewell as well. Capewell's a very experienced player. He's been around for quite a while. So, what are your thoughts there on that one?
Yeah, I think he was started a little bit slow for us, Capewell, and I thought he proved his worth as the season wore on. Really versatile. He played some really important hands when he had to sort of move to centre mid-game, and probably one of those players that does a lot of the work that coaches and teammates love, that maybe some fans like us might, not see or appreciate. And yeah, I think he's a pretty important cog. Andrew Webster knew exactly the player he was getting from his days at Penrith. So, he's been part of some very successful teams, played in a few grand finals for Penrith and then the Broncos. And yeah, I thought eventually he found his feet in that Warriors team, and it's going to be pretty important for them again, first, second row picked, I think.
Yeah, and also just regards to the lineup and how you see it like shaping up for round one against the Raiders. Obviously we've got one more trial this week. Maybe just give it a little brief. What are your expectations maybe going to that trial? Obviously we've got a few of the established players there as well, a few young players as well this weekend. So maybe just a bit of a a summary of how you think that trial's going to go in particular. What are you taking out of that trial going to round one?
Yeah, it's just another chance for some of those fringe guys, or the guys that probably are out of the 17 at the moment, to
Yep.
suggest that they should be in there. A couple of interesting talking points. You got Eddie Idemia Tava at centre. He's probably more of a second rower long term, but he's played a fair bit of centre in New South Wales Cup. Obviously, Adam Pompey was named for Māori All Stars and then has pulled out of that injured, but expected to be fit for round one. Yeah, I mean, it's probably just more of a tune-up and then a chance for some of these fringe guys to press their claims. But I think Andrew Webster's fairly certain on his 17, I would think. Some of these injuries, particularly to Dallin, it might throw a spanner into the works. I think what we saw with Chance getting the first run at fullback is that he'll be Andrew Webster's number one. Roger will be there on the wing, assuming he gets there. Gets through the trial okay. Ali Lautara is an absolute lock at centre there. I'd love to see if anyone, Tane Tuapiki on the other wing. I thought, he scored a classy try. He didn't look out of his depth on the wing. Sort of didn't really see him being well suited at first, but I think to plug that gap. It's either that or you're going to have Ed Cossey out there and you're playing with fire. The other centre spot's probably going to go to Adam Pompey, you would think. I'm still fairly lukewarm on Pompey. Just, again, slightly similar to Cossey, whereas his ceiling's not high enough to justify some of the poor games he has. Really interesting to see the same halves pairing named despite Chanel's availability. So I think, those two have got the inside running there, Metcalf and Martin. Although another shocker from Martin and a strong performance from Chanel could shake that up. And I think that the forward pack more or less picks itself. Barnett, Egan, Fisher Harris, Capewell, maybe a question mark over the starting on the other edge if it's New Corday or maybe a Vaimanga or Halasima. Aaron Clark will be there at lock. Then you got Walker, one of those young guys in there as well. There's maybe an opportunity for a Bunty Afoa, who I thought was quite good in the trial, or Tom Ale to force their way into the 17, and it's whether they do go with Sam Healy on that bench. But yeah, I think it's probably not as many question marks around round one as we thought, coming into the season.
Yeah, I think regards to the side, I think it's pretty close to being settled. Few spots here on that bench. It's a bit of Dylan Walker. Where's he gonna line up? Like would you have him on the, obviously would have him in the side, but on the bench, or would you have him starting, or who would you have it? Like you said, Aaron Clark, right? You said Aaron Clark. You'd have Aaron Clark there on that lock position.
Yeah, I thought he went really well the other night, and he sort of, he can, he's a fairly big body, handles those opening exchanges and gets the team rolling forward. And then if, when it's time to bring Barnett, Fisher Harris off or both, then, he can move up to prop. He's played plenty of front row for the Titans, then bring Dylan Walker on. The sort of stings taken out of that opening 20 minutes, and Walker can come on and do his thing, which he's done so well since he joined the Warriors as more of a ball playing middle forward. That's the kind of blueprint that they used when Tohu Harris was the starting lock, that sort of leave Tohu on but bring Walker on as well. I think that seems the obvious way to go. Tohu's a big loss, particularly just his work rate and what he brought as a ball player in the middle. But I think that's the way that they'll go with that sort of Clark Walker combination.
Yeah, and Steve's saying here, I like Tana. Tane's been the Titans' best player against us more than one occasion to partner Metcalf at the moment. I'd put Aaron at Fernie to combine with Tana's old teammate. So, yeah, no signs of Tana in this game. I don't know if he's still got an injury or not, because I haven't seen anything in regards to an injury, so I'm not too sure what the situation is. So I thought he would get a game this week. Against the Storm, but he's not been named even in the reserves. So
still carrying a calf problem at the moment. So expected to be available for round one, but without a trial run, you'd probably expect him to miss out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a bit unfortunate. It
is. It would be good to see him. It'd be good to see him get a run. I think in this in the Warriors team, particularly being new to the club. I actually thought maybe a Tanner Boyd Metcalf combination might be, and Luke Metcalf's been pretty noisy about wanting to be halfback. I still think he's maybe the best 5'8" in the club, Metcalf, and just the his ball running strengths, which might get a little bit lost when he's trying to organise the team, do all the kicking. As we know that Tanner Boyd's got a very good kicking game. Would have liked to see how that combination potentially worked, but again, it just doesn't seem like there's a right answer picking, a combination between those four guys. There's drawbacks. There's some attractions with every combination. There's some drawbacks. So, we'll just have to see who gets the nod and how it unfolds.
Yeah, and just one more question I'd like to cover up on before we do wrap it up. Jose is saying here, do you guys have any thoughts on Jett Cleary? Too early to say, really. Yeah, what are your from what you saw, it was just good to see Cleary, put on the Warriors jersey and Jett coming on the field. I know it was a little bit of excitement around it, and I was seeing Ivan in the crowd and his wife and the family there watching on. Yeah, what are your thoughts here? From what you saw, it was only a little bit of a glimpse on the field and what you saw with performance. So, what did you make out of him?
Yeah, well, first of all, really cool to see that moment with his whole family there. He only, got 10 minutes or so, and but it was obviously a big moment. He's playing with the big boys, albeit only in a trial. But this is a guy that hasn't even played Jersey Flegg yet. He played SG ball, probably would have played a bit of Flegg, but he was injured at Penrith last year. Exciting prospect. It's very difficult to sort of not get excited about him being a Cleary, and he looks like Nathan, and he's built like him. That was probably one thing that impressed me, was the size of him. He looks like a big, solid unit, whereas when he was playing SG ball, looked maybe a little bit wiry. So he's obviously, been working hard, and I think that, I think he's, a real prospect for the future. Looked good defensively. Didn't really get to see him with the ball much. Cronulla dominating that sort of last 15 minutes or so. He did put in one fairly dusty kick that almost came up trumps, scored on the full by a winger when he sort of miscued it off the side of the boot.
Yeah.
But yeah, stood up and made some good tackles near his own line, and if he can handle it physically, that's half the battle for these young teenage halfbacks. And I'd love to see him. He may skip Flegg altogether and be a New South Wales Cup, although obviously you got a bunch of other halves there that when they don't get picked in first grade, then they're going to be needing to play somewhere. But yeah, you just want to see a guy like that, start dominating through the grades. Big B, obviously too good for Jersey Flegg, and then obviously too good for New South Wales Cup, to the extent that you really have to, consider him for first grade. So it is exciting, and I think if he wasn't a Cleary, no one would be making too much noise. But he's got those genes, so who knows what can happen.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I think he's got a, we're going to see a lot more of Jett, no doubt about it. But obviously, we can't all be, putting too much pressure on him. He's only young. And of course, he's going to be obviously playing a lot of pathways in the pathways team with the Flegg side this season. So, if he does play well, strong, you never know in the future. But, it won't, I don't think it'll happen this year in terms of first grade. I think it'll be a couple of years away. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks, Will, for coming on. Really do appreciate you, giving your time up to come on and have a chat to me about the season ahead. And any last words you'd like to say, and also a prediction. How do you think the boys will go this season? Because obviously there's for me, I've said this to Anton, and Anton said this exact same thing in regards to expectations as fans. We can't expect a lot this year. It's a totally different season to what it was in 2023. We had a lot of hype going into last year, and it didn't quite work out. But what are your feelings regards to maybe like how do you think we'll go this year in terms of a finish realistically, and put your heart or your head on the line here? What do you reckon?
Oh, look, the heart says I'd love us to play a bit of finals footy again. Head
Yep.
says a par results, probably more around that 10th to 13th range. But you get a bit of luck. You get a kind run with injuries, although that hasn't really worked out in the preseason already. But and those combinations click, and you never know. Like, there's enough quality across the board there that if that halves situation does work out okay, we could sneak into that bottom part of the 8. But yeah, I'm not placing any extravagant bets on the Warriors making the 8. I'll put it that way. But looking forward to the season ahead, mate. And it's always an interesting ride either way. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about it, and hopefully we get to do it again sometime. We'll drag Brad on at some point as well. I know he's a big fan of what you do as well. So yeah, and maybe even Fonzie. You might be the one that gets Fonzie to finally show his face to the world. But yeah, in the meantime, we'll we'll just keep covering them as we do, and
Yep.
yeah, and we love your work, mate. So it's great to team up on this one for a chat.
No worries. Like I said, I do appreciate it, and yeah, we'll definitely try and get Brad on as well, both of you on at the same time, and just tee up something maybe during the season. You never know. Obviously we're all busy doing other stuff, but if we can tee something up during the season, let me know. Let me know. But yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. In the chat there, I had some good comments and interactions tonight, so I would like to go and thank everyone. Steve, we had Steve in the chat, he had some good comments. Jacko as well. We had Jose in the chat here, who says, I think 8th will be considered a successful season. And we also had Brian as well, McSweeney in the chat saying good stuff, lads.
Brian, good on you, mate.
Oh, you know Brian?
Yeah, he's the brains behind Mix and Pick, who is a partner of This Warriors Life. So yeah, he's a bloody legend. He loves it.
Yeah, awesome. So well, that is it, guys. Go and give a Will's podcast a listen on all the podcast platforms. This Warriors Life podcast. You guys are pretty much everywhere, isn't it? You're on Insta. You're on the podcasting platforms of Apple and Spotify. So you're going to give that a listen each week. And I believe you guys did a podcast only a couple of weeks ago, didn't you? So that was a great listen as well. So yeah, make sure you go and tune that. Give that one a listen, and they're also on YouTube as well. So go and give their YouTube channel a subscribe. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Like the video. Make sure you click the thumbs up button on the video. Share the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are a new viewer or returning viewer. It does help push the content out to more new viewers out there. And we'll see you guys all in the next one. Up Lars, I'll be back tomorrow night for my preview for the preseason trial game against the Storm. I'll be doing that as well. So see you guys then tomorrow night. Have a good one. See ya.